welcome. This is where the magic happens, some would say. This is yeah, where this is my social place where I come to play, think, process, regroup, exercise, meditate. Um, and today I would like to talk to you a little bit about work that's going to be in my show at False Flag and Charles Moffett, opening in March 18th. It's a little bit of a spoiler, which I'm really happy to share with you guys. You'll only be getting a small piece of the show, but they're very sizable chunks. So I think first, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about ideas that were circling me around the show. I approach this body of work course over 2020 and leading up to 2021, where we are now. I guess like everyone, just reflecting on how I got here, how we got here, and really started thinking. It was interesting because I had a lot of time. I felt very fortunate, unlike most people, to just really sit in my studio and just continue to work throughout the pandemic, throughout the shutdown, as well as witness and participate in various aspects. And I think it's interesting because I started noticing as I reflected on my work in a studio and things that were in tangent with them, I started considering aspects of my childhood. I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm an 80s baby. So a lot of things, I grew up watching a lot of TV, consuming a lot of, Yo MTV raps and, cartoons and things like that. And one of, I think that, the things that I really started, and also started rewatching some of those things as well. And I think one of the things I noticed is how in pop culture, mainstream media, that the way color is activated or radicalized to mean things, to signify things, and even to us as when I was a child to being adults, the way color kind of activates our mental capacity. And I started reflecting on, various things I watched as a show. One of them was the Power Rangers, and how each Power Ranger, had, their own color. And that color seemed to also relate to their identity, whether they were Black or Asian or male or female. And then also noticing how maybe and music videos, one of my favorite music video directors is Hype Williams, and just thinking about the way he used this monochrome aesthetic to kind of give a sense of empathy and emotion and energy into to accompany the music to portray this sense of visceral or atmosphere that was all being kind of generated through color. And that process of thinking kind of really led me to really start thinking about the energy in color and light and where that all came from, and how I can use that within my work, within my process, to almost create these I want to call them these charged beings, these kind of almost like casting a spell, where I'm kind of bringing these various things together to provoke a certain attention onto the viewer through color, through light, and through energy. And just to give you a small background to my work, so I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I wasn't necessarily raised with a strong art background. In high school, I never took an art class. It wasn't really something that I thought about being if you would have asked me in high school, junior high, or grade school, what do you want to be when you grow up? Um, I probably would have said a zoologist or an astronaut or something. But then later when I got to high school, I realized I was horrible at math. So that was never going to fly, excuse me. And so I ended up going to studying architecture in my first year of college, and eventually going on a study abroad program that first freshman year, which actually allowed me to travel outside of the country for the first time. And where we went to was Spain. First stop, we landed in Barcelona, Spain, and we did the Antoine Gaudi walking tour, and we had some free tickets afterwards to go see the Picasso Museum. And which was, so we went to the Picasso Museum, and that was my first time actually stepping foot into a art gallery, an art museum. At the moment, I had no idea who Picasso was, but I was very enlightened by him and his work, and seeing his lineage from the early works when he was a teenager to moving forward. I then came back to the States, dropped out of architecture, and moved to New York City. And it was there where I really started to, reflect on these moments of, thinking about Picasso, but then also considering to myself, maybe I could pursue an art career, or just study art in some capacity. So from there, I started studying at the Art Students League on 57th Street. I figured if I wanted to be Picasso, I should learn how to draw. So I started taking figure drawing classes. And that led me to then going back to school for my community college, which then also led me to pursuing my bachelor's degree at Hunter College, and then my MFA at Yale. Throughout that entire time, I was kind of having this love affair with painting, especially abstract painting. I remember the first time I was in Art History 101, the professor, it was the first day of class, so she was shopping. There was a shopping period, so she kind of did an overview of the course. We went from Rembrandt to Basquiat all in one class. And I remember just being very, just struck. I was in. I knew then that this is something that I was very passionate about, and that I wanted to be involved with it in some way, shape, or form. Let's take a walk. It wasn't until I got to Yale that I actually really started really thinking about making color as a subject matter. And it was kind of during that time, actually my intermission summer, where I actually went to my first Venice Biennale. And at my first Venice Biennale, I saw a group exhibition of Korean monochromatic painters called the Dansawa. Dansekwa. Thank you, Jam, my Korean interpreter. Dansekwa, which is monochromatic painting in Korean. And these group of artists really had they seemed to approach painting, monochromatic painting, almost in a spiritual way. They were thinking about nature. They were thinking about themselves. They were thinking about their atmosphere. And it was really trying to conjure that sense of humanity and spirituality within the color, within the materials, and ways in which they were using the paint. And I kind of left there thinking to myself that how I didn't know about these people, and started really questioning my education around the history of monochromatic painting. So from there, I kind of did my research, and realized that the first monochromatic image or painting in art in the Western European history is actually Of course, there's some racism and bigotry that comes along with that. But it's also the fact that he can kind of take the ways in which we define color and the stereotypes that are associated with color and really sum all that up into this very small and simple image. Um, and also have it kind of do this kind of psychological play on the mindset that reinforces what Western society kind of already thought about Black people, which was that they were of the lesser race. So when I started thinking of Malevich and really started, and then now we know that he also had a racist remark similar to he was fighting a tunnel written underneath his black square. Even thinking about the work of Ad Reinhardt and his black paintings, which at a closer look, we all know that there are various shades of dark blue. But how he described the color black as a vacuum, as a void, as something that ideas or things can go through and never come out. They're kind of lost. We're kind of reinforced this idea behind abstract painting of the non-objective, right? Nothing associated. But it was hard for me to believe that being a person of color and really thinking about how ways in which I was already defined as a Black person before my mother even gave me my name. As soon as I came out the womb, someone looked at me and said, "Oh, there's a black baby." And so it's interesting how these color codes are kind of interpreted, just pushed through like stereotypes and mainstream society, and how it's really a sense of psychological warfare that's also being reinforced through art. And me being an artist, I kind of wanted to combat that on my own level and say, okay, this is the level I'm going to do my fighting. Is by challenging people like Paul Below or the history of uh, monochromatic painting or Black paintings in their own. And so at the time I was in Paris and really started thinking about uh, color theory and really started mixing various shades of colors together, dark colors, dark tones of hues, like in this painting here, uh, of the color Black, but through an amalgamation of pigment of color, I can create this diversity and this very dynamic and complex image that really spoke to not only one's identity as a human being if they were a Black person, um, but also to the uniqueness of the world and the way light and color all kind of accumulates into that. Um, so here in my studio and looking at this wall, you can kind of get a sense of a little bit of lineage of materials and ways, processes in which I went about making paintings. Uh, on this wall, I think I've been in the studio for about 4 years. Um, so it's a little bit of everything kind of summed up on this wall. Here you're seeing kind of the first paintings I did here, which is on canvas, which is was a meditation in violet. And within all of these oil paintings, I was really painting with my hands. So all these are finger paintings. So all these brushstrokes here are all things I'm doing with my hand. I really started really thinking about the Korean painters and just the visceralness of their brushstrokes, and just the pure material of their paintings, and really wanted to get that in my work, which is why at a certain point I just started mixing quartz sand into the painting and actually adding, really lathering on the oil paint to try to get, really thick to get these waves, these peaks really poking out. Because I felt like when you look at a painting, I didn't just want to see a flat image. I wanted to see something almost like looking at a human face, that you see the contours. It almost, you see the sense of movement, this sense of life, in the painting. And also, so I really started thinking about the ways color also contributed to that sense of movement. So I started playing around more with iridescent pigments, which you're seeing up top here. And really, when I started playing around with iridescent pigments, I was also thinking about the cosmos and the way, the ways in which we, the source of color kind of comes to us via the cosmos, and really started thinking about the sun, right, our star, and the way the star kind of gives energy, light, warmth, really the cradle of life to this planet. We all could contribute to the sun. And when I started thinking about the sun's relationship to color, and thinking about Sir Isaac Newton in an experiment in which he did, where he held a prism up to the sun, which then dispersed the wavelengths of light, which allowed us to see the palette of the sun, which is the rainbow. And then start thinking about, well, if there's one, if our sun is this palette, science has shown us that there's hundreds of billions of stars in the cosmos, and I started imagining what it would be like to stand on another planet, another solar system, and really, I imagine what colors would I see, and how would I be perceived? Would my identity shift? Would I be a Black man, or would I just be a human being from the blue dot in our solar system? And so that experimentation of iridescent pigments, I was already kind of thinking, trying to push past the history of monochromatic painting, and really try to get to my own sensibility of what I called tonal painting, which is really a melange of colors together to kind of see color and see the world around us. And so it was at this point where I also started, I as the as I was hungry. And I went to the bodega to get a sandwich, and I came across this broken bus stop pavilion, and revealing um, flickers of the rainbow. And I felt like I was having that same aha moment that Sir Isaac Newton had when he discovered the rainbow. That the questions started to arrive, but then also this thing of this wonder of the possibilities of what could be. So I started thinking, what would happen if I actually brought this glass back to my studio, as I did, and started, painting with it, using the source of light that I have here in my studio, with the manner or this mannerisms in which I was painting, to see if I can broaden my palette even more, which led me to make. So what we have here is uh, a 6 by 6 foot painting, a process in which I started playing around with the glass, almost trying to see if actually let me show you a perspective on where I came from and where I am now. So this is the first piece I made with the broken bus stop glass. And I like having it around because at the time it was so visceral. I had no idea really what I was doing. I saw this show by Jack Whitten at the Met, where he kind of had these sculptures which were never before seen. But then you also got to see his his paintings at the same time, and just to see how his relationship to material really developed. And so I really started thinking in this kind of mosaic like aesthetic. I was like, oh, maybe I'll just like, kind of almost like a mason, just kind of spackle these pieces of glass in there. And then I started looking at this piece. I thought to myself, I really miss the color. I really miss the coloration that I was getting from the oil paintings, which then when I ran out of the glass, I actually moved on to get stained glass, like this red piece we're seeing here. And the stained glass, I really liked it. There's some iridescent glass that I found. There's also various shades of or types of stained glass. Some are hammered, some are smooth, some are a little more tie-dye. And but then I started thinking to myself, I was like, man, it would be nice if I actually actually started painting the glass. So then I kind of moved back to what I had left of the bus stop glass, and I actually painted the panel underneath it, and then actually painted on top of the glass, like we're seeing in this painting here. And from there, I thought to myself, there's something here. There's something I really wanted to explore, but how am I going to get more glass? I can't go around just breaking bus stop windows. That's not cool. I mean, I built a rep for myself, but would anybody want to sponsor me? I don't know if Charlie or John will show me. Maybe John would. But so people were replacing their glass or deconstructing a building, and I had the opportunity to acquire just blank sheets of glass, which then I started figuring out almost how to paint again, or figuring out how to use this to add to the language, the lexicon that I was already building from grad school to now. But the material was different. I started out maybe painting with clay, which is a very rigid material, to then moving to oil paint and acrylic, and then now painting on glass. So just to give you a little background to the process here, is that I'll take a sheet of glass, I'll paint it in the same manner in which I'll paint the oil paintings, and then I'll break it, so that I kind of get a nice palette, which is what we have here. This is some painted glass with iridescent pigment. That's over here. Yeah. You kind of see there's some blues, reds, various colors. So then when I have this palette, this glass, I then take that and come over to the panel here, and I actually just start setting the glass one by one. So I kind of just sit here, and it's almost like putting together a puzzle. If there's any puzzle enthusiasts out there, I'm kind of just sitting here, just meditating, thinking about the process, thinking about how things kind of work together, and just kind of putting the painting together piece by piece. It's a very laborious task, but I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm always surprising myself how fresh I can keep it from just sitting here. Sometimes I like sit here in silence and just think about the work, think about what's happening. And then sometimes I'll just sit here with music and just like, jam out a bit. So through this process of working with glass, I also started really thinking about other forms of what other forms color could take within the planet, or within within our solar system. And I started, the more I did my research, I started realizing that everything on Earth that has color is a tribute to the sun and the cosmos, stardust. We're all made of stardust, and everything that we see that has color is fine-tuned to a certain frequency that's really related to the color that it has, to its chemical compound. And so I started thinking about that history of color in nature, and the history of color and painting, and the history of color with man, and the relationship between them all. And really started thinking about where pigment came from, and thinking about cave paintings, the Lascaux caves. I realized that the marks, or the pigment that was used to make those beautiful drawings on the caves in Lascaux, is actually red jasper. And that was actually one of the first pigments that we use to actually grind up to make oil paintings. And I was like, how great would it be to just have that sense of history, that sense of time, that sense of space and light, just embedded raw within the painting. To just have that history just embedded, that sense of time just embedded right in the paint. So I kind of just started thinking about gemstones, or power stones, and their history that they have associated to their culture, and association to their colors that they are. And one of the first pieces I made is this red piece up here, which is red jasper. This entire painting is made of red jasper, but predominantly raw, uncut red jasper, cast in resin. And it's interesting to think about how not only does color mean things, but also how various cultures have thought about these gemstones also meaning things. So red jasper is a stone of stability and stamina. False flag within the exhibition is called Horizon Convergence. And this is really my kind of interpretation of what you can call the cosmos, of things aligning from the farthest point in the cosmos all the way down to the smallest atoms within me. And when I'm working on these paintings, I feel like I'm really trying to center myself. I'm trying to connect myself not only to what's happening immediately around me within the studio, but also what's happening in the world outside of this building, outside of New York City. Even try to focus on what's happening in our solar system and beyond. And so thinking about how, so within this painting, you kind of feel this sense of things kind of lining up, this kind of oneness happening. I feel like we as human beings, we feel like we're the center of the universe, the center of the galaxy, when really we're just a speck on a speck on a speck. But everything is connected. Everything is working together. Everything is associated. One wouldn't survive without the other. We wouldn't survive without the planet, without nature, without everything, without the sun rising or rotating around us every day. Accomplish the sense of thought, the sense of thinking. So within this painting, you have raw gemstones as well as the glass. This is cluster of quartz as well as amethyst, as well as another quartz cluster, Aurora Rainbow, and this is black tourmaline. And black tourmaline is said to be a stone of grounding. It's also a form of protection. Quartz for clarity, so I think I kind of wanted to have this balance between the two, but make sure that the painting was as charged as possible, with as much energy as I can conjure into it. Another painting I have in the show is this beautiful blue painting here. Not yet titled. It will be. I have a few on the wall, but I don't want to say just yet. But this is really another example, or a more expansive example of my idea of tonal painting, and engaging in the conversation of the history of monochromatic painting, in which I'm not just thinking about this as just a blue painting, but more of a cool painting, which kind of transitions from maybe a deep blue violet to somewhat viridian green. And also thinking about the source of light that is embedded in the painting and how those transition happens, but then also the materials in which, or the history in which these colors came to be. So one of my favorite gemstones to use is lapis lazuli, which I have embedded here in the painting throughout. There's not only lapis, there's also cellulite, as well as blue quartz, and fluorite embedded in this painting, and amethyst. But again, this is another example of trying to conjure energy through color to create this very spiritual experience kind of happening through the color, not just through visually, but also energy wise. I should also say that another way in which I use my paintings to try to connect with the cosmos is thinking about my astrology sign. So I am, my sun, moon, and rising sign is Libra, Sagittarius, and Capricorn. And I started really thinking, I very rarely read my horoscope, but I do kind of like the aspect of the way I am feeling inside being somewhat tangent to the rotating, the orientation of the planets around us. And I started really thinking about my own personal identity within that and how I can connect myself there even more. So within each of my paintings, I actually use the gemstones to map out my sun, moon, and rising constellation, which you can kind of see here on the underbelly of this painting, where these lines are actually the drawn out constellations. And then I'll actually add more gemstones into these, on top of these, so that, and to some degree, they revert back to Astorisms, which are just a cluster, which is actually what the astrophysicists describe as a group or a cluster of stars that we perceive to be an object, which for me is a very is a viewpoint of really kind of talking about abstraction in a way that we can look at the stars and see these things which from our perspective seem very close together, but really they're like millions of light years away from each other. So some are even in different galaxies, but to us, we see these points of light and in some way connect the dots and form an idea and give it a story and use it to talk about morals and life, and to tell people when to plant for the next harvest, and to tell people how to live their lives day to day. And to me, I feel like the same thing happens for me when I go to look at a painting, that maybe I'm just looking at this red painting, but in hindsight, it's really bringing memories to me, experiences. Um, I'm getting a sense of energy. I'm reflecting. I'm thinking. It's opening me up in a very special way, and it's making me consider life differently. It's changing my perspective towards life. And so, yeah, I just think that the connection between the two really made sense for me. Um, this is another painting that will be in the show. Also not yet titled. Um, there are a few on the board. I really take titles very seriously. I think because there's been so much attention on the language in which the ways in which we define color, the way we associate them, that I want to make sure that the titles that I give my paintings, that the intention is right. And yeah. So within this painting, you're having aspect, you're seeing red jasper, you're seeing amethyst, you're seeing yellow ochre, but they're all kind of mixed into the painting. They're adding to the color, they're adding to the energy, they're adding to the light, they're adding to the experience of in ways in which you're looking at the painting that make it more than just a flat object on a wall. That to me, this painting actually feels more alive than most objects that you probably see lying around your house. So yeah, in conjunction with these large paintings, I'm also making a series of continuing the small, like the 12 by 12 red resin piece that you've seen, where I'm actually playing around with various gemstones and kind of just casting them in resin that correspond to the color to add to this history of material and monochromatic painting, but making it more vivid, more alive. So this piece here is green fluorite and stained glass and resin. Thanks for having me. Yeah, again, this is just maybe a third of the show that you guys are seeing. I really hope everyone has the opportunity to come out and see the work in person. I'm really excited about everything that's coming up, and yeah, see you guys March 18th.